You know when people say, that relationship broke me? I used to laugh bitterly, not because I didn't understand, but because I did more than I cared to admit. It's not the breaking that hurts most. It's the fact that after a while, you start finding comfort in the cracks, like if you can just sit still enough, maybe the brokenness can feel like home. That was me and Eli. If you ask anyone who knew us, really knew us, they'd say we were toxic. Not in the way movies romanticize with a smirk and a leather jacket, but in the slow drip, soul-eroding way that leaves bruises no one can see. But I stayed. God help me. I chose to stay. Over and over again. The first time I found out he was cheating, it was digital. Screenshots, DMIs, pictures he didn't bother deleting. I remember my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the sound of my sanity, but he cried. He said he was sorry, that it was a phase, an addiction, something he was working on. I wanted to believe him, so I did. We were working through it. Therapy, boundaries, accountability apps, check-ins, the full performance. He relapsed. Of course, more than once. Hell, more than 10 times. And every time I'd scream and cry and pack a bag I never really intended to use. He'd grovel, promise, plead, and I'd stay. Eventually, staying stopped being a decision. It became muscle memory. The weirdest part is I started needing it, the chaos. I needed the pain the way some people need coffee to wake up. I would trigger myself on purpose. I'd go through his old accounts, search old usernames, scroll through pages and pages of filth even when I knew what I'd find. Sometimes I'd even hope I'd find something, because that gave me a reason to explode, to feel, to scream. And then, after the rage had scorched us both, we'd collapse into each other like survivors in the ruins. That was our ritual there. Was something magnetic in our dysfunction? I can't explain it well to anyone who hasn't lived it. But when someone repeatedly shatters you and then stitches you back together with apologies, tears, and desperate kisses, it feels like love, like intimacy, like proof that they must care, because why else would they keep crawling back, broken and ashamed? Eli had a sex addiction, a porn addiction, a validation addiction. Pick your poison, he had them all. And me. I became addicted to punishing him for it. I weaponized my pain. If I couldn't control him, at least I could control how much guilt I poured into every glance, every passive-aggressive silence, every perfectly timed breakdown. I'd act out to say cruel things, disappear emotionally, sometimes flirt with people I had no interest in, just to spark that same jealousy in him that he made me choke on daily. And then we'd make up. That was the part that kept me hooked. After every betrayal, there was the coming back. The apologies so thick with desperation, I could almost taste the honesty. The sex was always better after the chaos. Like we needed to bleed emotionally before we could touch physically. It wasn't just sex, it was atonement. It was a spiritual reckoning, and it felt real. I wasn't stupid, I knew it wasn't healthy. But when you're starving, even poison can taste like a feast. And Eli knew just how to serve it. Wrapped in promises, silence, tears, and broken eye contact. People say love shouldn't hurt, and maybe that's true. But when all you've known is love with pain, it becomes hard to separate the two. We blurred that line so often, I'm not sure it ever existed. I remember one night specifically. It was 2 a.m. I had just found another account. Another breadcrumb trail of women, videos, chats. My body went numb, but my brain went electric. I confronted him, yelling, crying, shaking. He looked at me like a cornered animal. Not because he feared me, but because he feared the look in my eyes. Part grief, part rage, part something unamiable. And then, just like always, he broke. Fell to his knees, begged, said he was sick, that he hated himself, that he needed me, and I stayed. What do you call that? Love? Trauma bonding? Codependency? Probably all of it. In between the chaos, we had soft moments, we laughed. We had inside jokes. We shared playlists. We cooked together, played board games. Those memories are what made it confusing, what kept me gaslighting myself. I'd think, if we were so toxic, why do I still smile when I remember him singing to me while washing dishes? Because that's the sickest part. Even pain has petals. But over time, the softness faded. Not all at once, more like a slow fade. Like an old t-shirt that used to be your favorite. He stopped apologizing as much. I stopped expecting it. We became strangers wearing old names, still calling it trying while both secretly keeping exit doors. Cracked open in our minds, there were moments I almost left for good. I packed the suitcase, sat in my car, drove to my sister's, but he'd find a way back, or I'd text first. We had a magnetic pull, not the romantic kind, the kind that drags a ship down into the sea. Eventually, something snapped. It wasn't dramatic, no cheating bombshell, no midnight confrontation, just silence. a growing void. And I realized I was no longer staying for love. I was staying because pain had become my compass. Without it, I didn't know which way was up. And that realization, that terrified me. Because if I left and I was still empty, then what had it all meant? If the pain wasn't proof of love, then what was it? Abuse? Addiction? Habit? So I left, fully blocked his number, changed my locks, moved cities, went cold turkey. No more checking his socials, no more just wondering texts. No more chasing ghosts and old messages, and at first, it felt like dying. I cried every night. Not because I missed him exactly, but because I missed the feeling. The intensity, the raw, unfiltered emotion, the drama, the breakdowns, the makeups, the spirals. It had given my life rhythm, even if it was destructive. Without him, my days felt sterile, safe, boring. I missed the pain like an old friend because, in our world, pain meant connection. And now there was no connection, just me walking around in a world that suddenly felt too quiet. No more landmines to tiptoe around, no more puzzles to solve, no more gut feelings to ignore. And that's when the hardest part began, not leaving him, but trying to figure out who I was without the chaos. Was I even capable of loving without the highs and lows? Could I find meaning in stability? Could I trust peace? I didn't have answers. All I had was a blank page, and honestly, that terrified me more than the most violent argument we ever had, but it was mine. There's something eerie about silence when you've lived in chaos. It's not peaceful at first, it's suffocating. I thought going no contact would be like ripping off a bandage. Sudden, painful, and then over. But no one tells you that. Silence doesn't end anything. It just makes you the only voice left in the room. And God, I hated the sound of my own thoughts. The first week without Eli was a fever dream. My body was still operating on the muscle memory of our dysfunction. I'd wake up reaching for my phone, heart already in my throat, expecting a fight or an apology or a breadcrumb disguised as a just thinking of you. But there was nothing, not even a blocked message alert. Just the brutal stillness of being truly alone. I had deleted his number, but I knew it by heart. It sat there, lodged in my brain like a splinter I couldn't reach. Sometimes I'd type it into my notes just to see it, just to make sure I still remembered. I told myself it wasn't weakness, just nostalgia, a twisted form of comfort. The dreams were worse. In them, he'd show up out of nowhere, same crooked smile, same broken apologies. Sometimes we'd fight, sometimes we'd fall into each other again, but I always woke up with the same feeling, a cold ache in my chest. Like someone had been sitting on it all night. I started journaling like my therapist once suggested, trying to pour the poison out onto the page. But half the time the pages stayed blank, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I couldn't figure out what I was feeling. It wasn't just sadness. It wasn't even loneliness. It was flatness. Like someone had turned the volume down on life. That was the scariest part. I had spent so long in emotional extremes that I didn't know how to exist without them. With Eli, I was always either devastated or euphoric, crying or making love like we were the last two people on earth, furious or blissful, never neutral, never still. Now I was dating someone new. His name was Daniel, and he was the kind of man you should want, grounded, kind, emotionally available. He listened when I spoke, remembered details, sent flowers on Wednesdays just because. He wasn't exciting, not in the electric destructive way Eli had been, but he was good, and still, I kept waiting for him to mess up, not in the obvious ways. I wasn't looking for him to cheat. I was looking for signs he could hurt me so that I could feel something sharp again. That's when I realized how deep the damage ran. I didn't trust happiness unless it had blood on it. We'd be sitting on his couch, watching something soft and forgettable, and I'd catch myself feeling hollow. Not because I didn't like him. I did. Maybe even more than I wanted to admit. But because there was no adrenaline, no tension, no edge. Just warmth. And I didn't know how to receive warmth without also preparing for fire. I started poking subtle jabs, passive-aggressive comments, delayed replies to his texts. Not because he did anything wrong, but because I wanted to feel the spark of confrontation. He never took the bait. He'd say, "Are you okay?" In that calm, curious voice that made me feel exposed, seen, and that scared me more than any of Eli's lies ever did some nights. I'd go back to the digital graveyard, old messages, old photos. Archived screenshots of fights I should have deleted. I called it pain shopping, like scrolling through a car crash and pretending I was just curious. But really, I was chasing the ghost of intensity, hoping to feel that rush, that ache, that twisted sense of aliveness. But it didn't hit the same. My body didn't react. My heart didn't race. It just sat there, numb. And that made me panic. If even this doesn't make me feel anything anymore, then what the hell will? That's when I started playing with fire, not with Eli. I stayed no contact, but with myself. I started creating emotional simulations, rewatching movies that gutted me, listening to breakup playlists on loop, writing letters I never planned to send. I'd cry on purpose, stare at old photos until my eyes blurred. Not because I wanted to go back, but because I wanted to feel something real again. There's a word for that, right? Emotional masochism? Whatever it is, I wore it like perfume, and still, nothing cracked. Not fully. Not the way it used to. I started wondering if I was broken. Not in the heartbroken sense, but actually broken. Like maybe I had rewired my brain to only find meaning in suffering? That maybe I would never be able to love in a healthy way because healthy felt too quiet, Daniel noticed. Of course, one night, after I had been weirdly distant, he looked at me and said, "It feels like you're waiting for something to go wrong." I wanted to lie. I wanted to say, "No, I'm just tired." But instead, I whispered, "I don't know how to do this." Without the noise, he didn't judge me, he just nodded, held my hand. Like he understood that loving someone with scars meant sometimes you have to sit with their silence and not try to fix it. That night, I cried in his arms. Not because I missed Eli, but because I missed the version of me that used to feel everything. At 200%. The girl who could scream and sob and kiss all in the same breath, who mistook emotional chaos for passion. Now I was just calm, functioning, stable, and deeply uncomfortable with all of it. I think healing is like quitting sugar. At first, everything tastes bland. You keep craving the sharpness, the hit, try to substitute it, dates, honey, fake sweeteners, but nothing satisfies the same way. Eventually, your taste buds adjust, but those first few months, they're brutal. That's where I was. In the bland, bitter middle. Far from the chaos, not quite at peace. Floating somewhere in emotional limbo, I started filling my time with structure. Morning walks, yoga, cooking, things I used to roll my eyes at when I was in survival mode. I wasn't doing it to find myself. I was doing it because otherwise I'd spiral. And honestly, some days I still did. But slowly, painfully slowly, I started noticing small shifts. I started laughing at things again. Real laughs, not the hollow, polite, kind. I started sleeping through the night without checking my phone. I started letting Daniel in, piece by piece, not all at once, but enough. One afternoon, we were at a bookstore. I picked up a novel about heartbreak out of habit. Daniel walked up behind me and said, "You know, you don't always have to pick the sad ones." I smiled. "Yeah, I just know how they end." "But maybe you need to read one that ends differently," he said. And maybe he was right. Maybe. I needed to stop replaying the old script, expecting a different ending. Maybe the reason life felt bland now wasn't because I was dead inside, but because I was finally detoxing from emotional whiplash. Healing isn't a cinematic montage. It's awkward. It's boring. It's full of days where you don't cry but don't really laugh either. Where you eat your salad and go for your run and wonder if this is all there is. But every now and then you have a moment, a soft sunset, a quiet cup of coffee, a gentle conversation, and you feel something stir. Not a high, not a crash. Just presence. And it doesn't knock the wind out of you. It just fills your lungs slowly, like air returning after a long dive. That's where I am now. Breathing again, even if it still feels unfamiliar. And Eli has become less of a ghost, more of a shadow. Still there in certain corners, but no longer dictating the shape of my days. I haven't unlearned all my patterns. I still crave that burn sometimes, but I'm learning not to chase it. I'm learning to sit in the quiet without flinching. To let love feel safe, even when it feels dull. To believe that calm can be beautiful, too, because maybe peace isn't the absence of feeling. Maybe it's the permission to feel without fear. For the longest time, I thought healing would feel like arrival, like there'd be a morning I'd wake up, stretch, and just know that I was over him, over the chaos, over the version of me that needed pain to feel alive. I expected a thunderclap, moment, something cinematic. But if I'm being honest, healing arrived more like a text I forgot I sent and then stumbled across weeks later. Quiet, unassuming, but still there. It didn't feel like joy. It felt like relief, and even that felt suspicious at first. I remember the exact moment it hit me. I was walking home from work, headphones in, scrolling through some dumb podcast about attachment styles. Normally, this would have sent me into a spiral of analyzing Eli, replaying everything, wondering how much of it was trauma and how much was choice. But that day, I skipped the episode just like that. No deep sigh, no internal wrestling match. I just thought, nah, I don't need to go there today, and kept walking. It was small, but it cracked something open, because for once I wasn't trying to figure it all out. I wasn't searching for a secret code in my past that would make it make sense. I wasn't aching to hurt or longing to feel anything other than the present moment. I was just walking home, and I felt okay. Not ecstatic, not devastated, just okay. And for someone like me, someone who used to equate okay with dead inside, that was progress. The thing they don't tell you about healing from emotional intensity is that it can feel a lot like grieving a part of yourself. I had to let go of the woman who screamed in bathrooms, who slammed doors just to be chased, who broke things, his, mine, whatever, just to feel powerful. I had to grieve her. She wasn't just angry, she was scared. She wasn't just dramatic. She was desperate to be seen. And in some strange way, I loved her. She kept me alive in the wreckage, but she doesn't get to drive anymore. Now, life looks different. Not perfect, not wrapped in a bow, just real. I'm still seeing Daniel. It's been almost a year now, and he still shows up with that same steady energy that used to make me itch with suspicion. I remember once, early on, I accused him of being too good to be true. I waited for the punchline, the mask to drop, the darkness to leak out, but it never did. He wasn't pretending to be calm, he was calm, and eventually I realized I didn't have to manufacture drama to match the chaos I thought love required. I told him once, "You're the first person I've been with who doesn't make me feel like I have to earn safety." He looked at me, no hesitation, and said, "That's because you don't," and I cried. Not the violent, gasping sobs I used to cry with Eli, just quiet tears. The kind that feel like your soul is unclenching, like your nervous system is exhaling for the first time in years. We still have disagreements, of course. He's not a fantasy, he forgets things. He leaves dishes in the sink. Sometimes he shuts down when I need him to lean in. But we talk, we repair, we don't spiral into theatrics. And weirdly enough, that used to feel boring. Now, it feels like love. I used to think passion meant chaos, that if someone wasn't breaking my heart, they weren't in it fully. But Daniel taught me that real passion doesn't have to burn you to leave a mark. Sometimes it's in the way he rubs my back when I'm anxious, or the way he remembers how I take my tea, or how he listens when I talk about Eli. Not with jealousy, but with compassion. I didn't erase my past. I just stopped letting it dictate my future. There were moments I almost self-sabotaged. I'd catch myself crafting little emotional bombs, dropping hurtful comments, threatening to leave, picking fights over nothing. But Daniel, he didn't play. He'd say, "I'm not the enemy," and walk away, not in anger, but in calm assertion. That stopped me faster than shouting ever could. Because what do you do when someone refuses to reenact your trauma with you? You either heal, or you leave. And this time, I chose to stay. But here's the thing no one really talks about. Sometimes, the person you need to forgive isn't your ex. Sometimes, it's yourself. I spent months hating myself for staying with Eli, for craving the pain, for becoming someone I didn't recognize. But all that shame, it kept me stuck. It kept me small. I needed to look back at that version of me, the girl in the eye of the storm, and say, "I get it. You did what you had to do to survive, but we're not there anymore." Forgiving myself was harder than anything Eli ever did to me, because while he betrayed me, I stayed. I gave my trust, my body, my time to a man who couldn't love me in a healthy way. And even though I understand, now that trauma bonded us and addiction blurred everything, part of me still wanted to scream, "Why didn't you just leave?" But that voice is quieter now because I did leave. Maybe not the first time, maybe not the fifth, but eventually, I chose me. That counts for something now. On the other side of it all, I see that healing isn't a destination. It's not a trophy you get for surviving. It's a daily practice. A choice to wake up and not reopen the wounds just to prove they're still there. A choice to stop measuring love by how much it hurts. I still get tempted sometimes, not to go back, but to chase that rush. To press on the bruise, just to feel something sharp. But I don't. Or if I do, I notice it quicker. I don't spiral. I just breathe. I remind myself that calm is not the enemy. That peace doesn't mean numbness. It means freedom. I spend more time with myself now. Not in a lonely way, but in a way that feels grounded. I take myself on dates. I light candles for no one but me. I write poems that no one reads. I dance in my kitchen while dinner simmers, and sometimes I still cry. But the tears aren't for Eli anymore. They're for the girl I used to be, for how long she lived in survival mode, for how hard she fought, for how far she's come. One night, not long ago, I found one of Eli's old t-shirts buried in the back of my closet. My heart didn't seize up. I didn't smell it for memories. I didn't fall to the floor in tears. I just stared at it for a minute. Then I folded it, walked it out to the trash, and let it go. Just like that. No ceremony. No rage, just release. I still think about him sometimes, not in a longing way. More like someone you used to know intimately, whose story you once shared. but who no longer occupies the front seat of your life. I hope he's healing too. I hope he's facing himself. But that's not my story anymore. My story now is about softness, stillness, joy without adrenaline, love without pain, peace without apology, and I know I'm not alone in this. I know there are others like me, women and men, who mistake volatility for love, who don't know what to do when things are just fine, who chase heartbreak just to feel alive. To them, I say, you're not crazy, you're not broken, you're just used to surviving, but you deserve to live, and living, real living. It might feel boring at first, but give it time, give it breath, give it space to bloom, because one day, without even noticing, you'll wake up, stretch, and realize you don't miss the pain anymore. Not because it wasn't real, but because peace finally is. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more of these stories.